Today's episode is called Call It in the Ring. It's just a conversation between me and my good friend Marc, talking about what I've got going on and just a few various subjects. So it's going to be a weekly thing that we do. We hope that you guys enjoy it. We enjoyed filming it, so stick around for all of that. As always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel. Go to the WWRE Podcast and give me a 5-star rating and write me a review. It really does help to build this platform, so please take the time to do so. And I'm looking to speak to as many of you as possible. If you're interested in real estate, in whatever aspect that is, I'd love to have a conversation with you, see if there's any way I can help you. So there's going to be a link in the description down below, or you can go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com and sign up there. But before that, enjoy this episode, which is called Call It in the Ring.
Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we have another awesome, amazing, unbelievable, special episode where we've decided to call it in the Ring. And we have Marc Antoine with us again today. What's up, Marc?
Hello, Barry. Thank you for having me for another wonderful episode of Call It in the Ring. I think we
Yes.
should explain to the people, like, what does it mean, call it in the ring, when a wrestler call it in the ring? What does it mean?
For those people that are not watching on audio, Marc was getting very passionate and bringing up his fist. And yeah, you guys should watch this. Always watch it on YouTube if you can, just for Marc, for entertainment purposes and nothing else. So call it in the ring means, in wrestling terms, it means, I think it's no secret that wrestling is entertainment, right? And it's not, the outcome is predetermined. So a lot of times when you're coming up with a match, you'll come up with certain ideas before the match and you'll talk with your opponent and you figure stuff out. It's not choreographed. It's not a big rehearsal for a week before like everyone thinks. It's just certain things that you'll discuss. And then a lot of the other stuff is kind of ad lib, that you're improv in the ring. But sometimes you don't do any of that whatsoever. And what they say is you call it in the ring. You call the match in the ring. So Marc came up with a brilliant idea of calling this Call It in the Ring, because we have not too much planned, right? It's just a conversation between me and Marc about what I've been up to and kind of what the last week has looked like. So I like that name a lot. So I got to thank you, Marc, for coming up with that. Even though what did we call it? What was the first week? Call in the Ring. It was
Call in the ring. But I think I got the information wrong online, or maybe it's my $2 English.
$2 English.
Yeah, well, this is what happened when you work with someone that is from Montreal, that lives in Spain and also lived in Vegas, and has like many languages in his brain. Sometimes the cables just don't. Yeah, you know,
Hey,
that's a downside of, yeah.
out of interest for people, like how long have you been in Spain now, and how much have you enjoyed living in Spain?
I love living in Spain because it's I'm all about having a simple life. I'm really about having that very, a simple life, an economy of resilience. You know what I mean? I don't have a jet set lifestyle. I had it. To me, it's empty. I don't want a Lamborghini. I don't want to go to the Fiji island. You know what I mean? I have a garden. I have animals. I'm chopping a lot of wood those days. I live close to nature. Um, in Spain, the cost of living is so low that I can really focus on what I really love to do. You know what I mean? Which is helping people like you to grow themselves, or to grow their business. And that's what I love about Spain. It's the simplicity overall. It's very like Spanish people, and well, Catalan people. I live near Barcelona. I don't live in the city. It's they're not complicated. They're very very simple. They're not too judgmental. They don't. In America, when you meet someone for the first time, the first question is, "What do you do for a living?" Right? In Spain, it's not about that. they don't necessarily ask you that, they don't want to know how much you make. um so no, I love to live in Spain. Well, there is some down points, like for example, everything is closed on Sunday, and coming from Montreal, I love to go to Home Depot on Sunday, you know what I mean, and get some gardening stuff, and you know what I mean. Having the Sunday is a good day to do chores outside. And but no, everything is shut down on Sundays. Just the bars are open. But
The
overall, I
it's
really love
open.
it.
The important stuff is open on Sunday, I guess. Then.
Yeah, the bars are always open. Bars are a culture here. It's not an event. It's bar. You can go to a bar 4 times, and that's why probably Americans also, when they come to a city like Barcelona, they're drunk all the time because they just see people in the bars always. But here, the people don't necessarily get drunk. It's just a way of living. You go at the bar to have a coffee in the morning, and then you have a coffee after lunch, and then you might have a beer or two at night, and it's that 7 days a week. I don't have that lifestyle because I live in a rural part of Spain. Like, I don't live in a town, but most of Spanish people have that lifestyle. So I love it, but I miss Vegas. How is Vegas those days?
These
What's up
days,
in Vegas with the COVID these days? Thank you. With the COVID thing, it must be like a ghost town. It must be ridiculous.
um, I don't think it is. Truthfully, I don't know. So I live 15 minutes outside of the strip. Like as you know, most people, for people who don't live in Vegas and only come to live in Vegas, right? There's a whole different lifestyle outside of the strip, right? The people who live
Yeah,
here, they very rarely go to the strip. In fact, you kind of avoid it as much as possible.
of
So
course. Yeah.
I go to my grocery store around where I live. I go to the park where I live. I go to the gym. I go maybe to a restaurant. But outside of that, I don't really go to. I haven't been close to the strip in 2, 3, 4 months maybe. So I couldn't really tell you outside of what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing it's decently busy. The only thing that I'm hearing is that there's the clientele that's coming here now is not is as of a I don't know how to word this properly is they're rougher, right? Because they're offering lower rate rooms to get people to come.
Ah,
So that's bringing people that might not usually be able to afford it. And just because they can't afford it doesn't mean that they're bad people, but it is bringing in a certain type of person. So there's a lot of fights, stabbings, shootings that weren't happening before. Yeah, on the strip that you would never
wow.
hear about before. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, but to me, it hasn't really. I don't see too much at all because, like I said, I don't leave my house too much or my area that I live in. I leave my house, but not the area that I live.
In terms of real estate, because I lived in Vegas about close to 8 years in Vegas, and I moved in Vegas in 2010.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it was right after the crash. Like, I bought my house. If I remember well, I bought my house cash, 100 grand, and I sold it, if I remember well, for like 260, 270, something like that.
yeah.
A couple of years after. It was just insane. How do you forecast the real estate market right now? What do you see around? I mean, I know your wife is a real estate agent, so you might. What's going on in the real estate market right now in Vegas? What would you?
Yeah, so the market itself is really hot. People are buying like crazy here. So you've got
Wow.
low interest rates. You've got people moving from California. You getting people that don't. If there's a lot of people got stuck in their houses or their apartment right for this lockdown. People want a bigger house. They want more room. They want more land. They want a backyard, right? So all this is driving up demand. There's a lot of demand, and there's also a little bit less inventory, or a decent amount less inventory. So that's really driving up prices because you're getting multiple offers above or at least at list price on a lot of offers. Even I heard the luxury market, which is 1.5 million and above, that was up like 17% in the last few months,
Wow.
which is just nuts. So the
Wow.
in a way it's on fire. And in terms of sales volume, I think actually the actual amount of sales is up from last year as well. So it's not necessarily just low inventory and a low amount of sales. There's actually a good amount of sales as well. So it's really hot right now, which is strange because you've got to think, and I'm no economist, and I don't fully understand all that stuff. I try and pay attention, But you've got to think that Vegas is going to be one of the hardest hit economy because of so many things, right? Vegas really relies not just on tourism, but international tourism, right? Or people coming from a far distance, right? If you're coming in from California for the weekend, you're not spending a ton of money here, right? Because you can come back next week or you can come back next month.
Yeah.
But if you're
But
flying,
when you come from China,
might be the only time you're ever here. This might be the only time that you're ever here. So you're going to do everything that you can, spend every penny that you have, and go to the shows, go to the restaurants, go to the strip, spend money at the casino, right? Do all that stuff. So I think at some point, I think the stimulus has kind of kept things afloat, along with the eviction moratorium, the forbearances. That's kind of kept stuff afloat. And I heard today we're at December 17th. I heard recently that they're extending the eviction moratorium here until March 31st. So you can evict someone in Las Vegas if it's anything COVID related. Now, if it's something else, you can, I think. But so it hasn't. There hasn't been any real effect apart from actually making things more expensive in terms of real estate. But I have to think at some point there has to be something that happens here, because
a readjustment at least,
Yeah, because
you're gonna have a readjustment.
If you speak to people all around you, like my neighbor, he's gone from working 5 or 6 days a week to working 2 days a week. Now he's trying to work Uber as well to supplement his income, but Uber is tough as well. Everyone's doing it, and so we bought our car from someone that couldn't afford it anymore because they lost their job. It's everywhere all around you. You just start talking to people, you hear these stories, but then you look at the real estate market, and it's all completely on fire. It's nuts. Like a house that's decently priced in a good area, if you're not putting an offer in that day, it's gone. Literally that day. The day it hits the market. My wife, like you said, my wife is an agent here, so she's telling all her clients who's looking to buy, hey, if you like this, we need to make your mind up, pretty quickly, and let's shoot in an offer, and let's not mess around. You want to be in that list price. Like, it's such a seller's market here right now, right? You don't really want to ask for a closing cost. You don't want to, you might want to go slightly above list price, because people are in cash as well. That's the crazy thing. There's so many people coming in at list price with cash. How could it's really hard to compete with that?
I feel that Las Vegas is a type of city that will just go through everything. There is so much money involved in Vegas. People have no idea. So I just think that Vegas is going to be a city that will always rise from his own ashes. Always, because there's nothing to compare with the pandemic, but you remember the shooting that happened, like I want to say like 4 years ago. Tourism dropped down drastically after that, but Vegas is the type of city that will like go through many crises. It's just that sort of, I always say Las Vegas is a unplace. It's not a place, it's just, how do you describe the strip? Of course, outside of that, it's a normal town, but it's just like a floating town. Like you go in a casino at 3 a.m. Of course, when there's no pandemic, you go in a casino at 3 a.m. It's the same thing than at 7 a.m., than at noon, than at, you know what I mean? And I just feel that Vegas will survive no matter what. So coming back to the real estate market, on the long run, someone that, even if you overpay for a house in Vegas in 20 years from now, it won't matter. That's a beautiful part of real estate. You know what I mean? That's my would you invest or in real estate? Like would you consider, like, I know would you consider to do, I don't know, buying several units in Vegas? Do you see yourself doing that, or you do you think it's a good city to invest, to do the multifamily? I mean, in your
I think it's a good city to invest. You just got to be careful right now, right? And there's always time to buy, right? Like people say, oh, you want to wait, blah blah blah. Well, if you find a great deal, and you can buy at any point, right? But it needs to be a great deal, right? So it doesn't matter. So I definitely would buy in Vegas even now, even considering that I think that there will be some type of slump, downturn. I really don't think it'll be anything like 2008, 2009. I think that was a once in a lifetime thing, because it was real estate that essentially caused things to kind of go south, right? So I don't think that, and I think banks have learned from that. I've heard that a lot of people talk about that banks don't want to cause that situation again, right? Because it doesn't. They don't want to be selling properties for 30 cents on the dollar, right? They don't want to be giving
Yeah.
70% off. So they'll hold, and banks have a lot of money, right? So they they can afford to rent it out if they need to be. They can hold on to it. So they don't want to have an influx of foreclosures. So I don't think people are predicting like, this huge crash and all these foreclosures are going to happen because of forbearances. But, I don't see, for one, banks wanting to have that happen. There might be some, of course, there might be some, but it won't be anything like 08 or 09. I don't think, in my personal, and again, this is just an opinion. Plus, also, I don't see the government letting that happen, right? They'll
No, no, no,
extend
for
the
sure.
forbearances longer if they need to, right? They'll extend the eviction moratorium. That they don't want they don't want the same thing to happen again, right? Because for people who don't know, like the government acted really fast when they saw this pandemic happen. They just lowered interest rates, like the Fed lowered interest rates.
Yeah.
And the Fed is different to the government, but it's getting into a long speech now. But just to give people an idea, they lowered interest rates almost immediately. They acted so
Yeah.
fast. They started pumping money into the economy really quick, right? They acted really fast, and it's because they knew what had happened last time. And I think that because they know and they saw that, they won't let that happen again. I don't know what it looks like, and what does that mean for our future? I don't know, right? Further down the line, but I really don't think they'll let
But
a
that's why also the stock market is like it keeps rising and rising and rising because of all those stimulus. It's not more complicated than that.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense on a rational perspective, but it is what it is. It's speculation.
Yeah, and it's so
Um,
hard to predict because I've heard so many predictions about what's going to happen, right? And of course, we're trying to understand what's going to happen, right? Because if you can understand what's going to happen, you can invest accordingly, right? You can act accordingly to, if you knew what the future was going to hold, you could act accordingly. So you try and predict because you've got to have an eye on what's going to happen next, right? If you just blindly
yeah,
invest and blindly doing stuff, well, that's not so smart. But there's so many things, like, for example, right? When this first hit, we started looking for a car because our lease was up in a bit. And we were like, no, in a few months' time, we think car prices will go down. And there was talk like Hertz had to sell thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of cars. So that influx of cars was going to dilute the market and make
yeah,
it weaker and make car prices go up. But actually what happened was car prices went up because people weren't manufacturing new cars weren't being imported, so there was a real shortage of cars. So actually car prices went way up, and a used car is so expensive right now. A used car is pretty much the same price as a new one. Not quite, but pretty close. So much so that a lot of times it doesn't make sense to buy a used car right now because a new car, you can get a brand new car for pretty much the same price. And I'm talking 2 or 3 years old, right? So
yeah,
no
yeah,
one could
yeah,
have really foreseen that because everyone was predicting a crash in the car market.
yeah,
But the opposite happened. So I think that's the problem with predictions. You can like never know. Once it happens, like that makes because I know this because I was looking for a car. But once that someone explained to me why cars are up, it makes perfect sense. But 3 or 4 months ago, the opposite made perfect sense to me. So that's the problem with predictions. Until it happens, you don't know. And once it happens, you'll see it clear as day. It'll be really obvious. But until that happens, so I think it's good to look forward, and it's good for all of us to try and have an eye on that and try and not predict, but see what might happen. But at the same time, you've got to understand that what we think will happen probably won't happen, and something else will happen, and it'll be be really obvious once it does happen.
yeah. I think this year there's a lot of things we took for granted, and here we are, almost a year after a virus uh, wiped out the planet and flip everything upside down. But on a deeper level, I think just to talk about the coronavirus, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to everyone to reconsider their life, or the lifestyle they had, because you take a lot of things for granted. Like, we know a bunch of performers, Cirque du Soleil performers, that have like a good quality of life, but they never did what you do or what I did, which is on the side of their 478 shows a year, keep improving themselves, learning new skills, starting a business, get the ball rolling. And those artists that took everything for granted, bang, a virus like that hit, and they're like, wait, what? oh wait, unemployment is not like what am I doing? What people are not ready for that. So I just think the virus helped us put the things into perspective in our life. You know what I mean? It's of course it's a tragedy. People have died, and it's very sad. But I think we could be personally, I'm very grateful it happened, because I could move forward with a bunch of things in my life that are way closer to my core values. Um, so there's good there's good stuff about that.
I
I
agree.
think
I
about the
agree. I think,
coronavirus.
like
You
you
know?
said, I think it gave people time to reassess their lives and to think
Yeah,
like, do I need to go to an office or work? What makes me happy? Like, it gives you that time, because a lot of times we're in the rat race, right? We're just
yeah,
constantly going, working, thinking about this, doing that, looking, taking kids to practice, taking kids to this, blah blah blah, all this stuff, right? And it doesn't always give you time to reflect. So I think, yeah, of course, hey, don't get me wrong, the pandemic has been tough on a lot of people. Not
no,
only people
of course.
died, people being sick from it, but economically, I think, it's affected a lot of people massively. But I think there is some positives to it as well, right? Hopefully that doesn't sound bad. I don't mean that
No, 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 no. I mean, no, no, no worries. I think people understand perfectly our point, because your crowd knows those notion of their business owners, or their entrepreneurs. Sorry, that's a French word that I cannot pronounce in English. Entrepreneur. Um, they understand what we mean. I'm sure they're super smart
croissant
people.
is that word for me. I can't say it any other way than croissant. I can't say
Croissant, un croissant, un
croissant.
croissant,
And I don't even say it properly. I know I don't say it
un
properly,
croissant,
but how do Americans say it? I can't even
un,
say it. I don't know. Every time I say
un
it, I feel
croissant.
weird saying croissant. Anyway.
What's up? So the last time we spoke, um, so we spoke about like the 6 unit that you bought in January last year. No, this year actually, at the beginning of the year. It feels like 20 years ago, but it was just a couple of months ago. Did things like did the thing evolve a little bit? What's up with that?
Yeah, so I think we spoke about it last week, but I can't remember exactly what we said, so I'll fill it in. So I have a 6 unit that I needed to renovate all the units. I've renovated 4. We're in the process of doing the 5th now. And the good news is, last week, and I don't know if I covered this, I got 2 tenants that moved in at a really good rental
Cool.
rate, which is great right? They moved in December. December is a really tough month, probably the hardest month of the year to get tenants to move, right? Because nobody wants to move around Christmas. It's cold. Because the property's in Cincinnati. It's cold. It's raining.
Yeah.
It's snowing. So people don't really want to move quite the same. So it's a tough month at least. But I got 2 tenants in at a really good rental rate. So with my goal of trying to sell this property, that's really good, because the higher the rents, the more increase what they call the NOI, the net operating income, the more it increases the value of the property. So now I'm in the process of doing the 5th unit. It's going to be a 1-bedroom. We're opening up some walls to make it an kitchen into the living room, open concept, putting in washer dryers, because this area, the type of people that will be staying there, probably young professional type people, they want to wash a dryer in their unit, right? They don't want to go all the way down to the basement. And this is a 3rd floor unit as well. So you're talking going down to the basement, you're talking four floors. So we're putting in a washer dryer. There's room for a washer dryer unit. So the contractors are busy doing that. So everything's going well on that property. It's going, I think the value is going to be a lot higher than what I thought, which is great. That's really exciting to see. And it's cool as well to see the units transformed. Even though I'm not doing the work myself, it's kind of my vision of how they look, and what, the color of the walls, what flooring we use, what type of countertops, what cabinets we put in, what appliances we put in, where do we put everything. So to see that transformation, especially some of these units, and that they were so rough beforehand, to see them transform.
There's something artistic about this whole thing. The people that flip houses, like, I'm sorry, they are artists. Like this is the way I see it. You buy a junk, and you want to create something cool. There is something very artistic about remodeling, and well, maybe more in flipping houses, but it's cool, no, to see the thing growing, changing, even if you don't live there, even if it's just an investment, and you're gonna keep it for a couple of years, and you're gonna resell it. That transition is cool.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think I have that flipping gene that people, I completely get it. People that they see these horrible houses and walls are everywhere, and they go in and they see it
Yeah.
So you watch these shows and they talk about it, right? Even though these shows are really fake. Just a piece of advice, anyone who's watching these flipping shows on TV, do not use that as any kind of guide as how to flip in terms of numbers anyway, right? It's so far off. But in terms of what they see, I think that's always impressive. Oh, we knocked down this wall. We'll put these cabinets here. We'll do that. It really is, like you said, a piece of art that they're creating.
Of course.
Yeah. So with that as well, looking at, the 6 unit going well, I've got a good relationship with the broker. So I've also been looking at other deals. There was a 23 unit this week that I looked at, which they wanted a lot. I think pricing in multifamily is kind of similar to single family in a lot of markets now. It's really hot because multifamily is an attractive place to be because it held up so well during the pandemic. And I think there's a lot of money from other assets coming there. There's people coming from maybe the stock market because they see the volatility from there. There's people coming from that usually invest in retail and office space. They see that, they've been hit by this pandemic. They saw that multifamily held up well. So there's some money coming in from there. Plus, again, the interest rates are really driving stuff, right? Where you can pay higher prices for stuff now and get a better return on your money because low interest rates. The interest rates are so low on commercial as well. Usually commercial is in 5+%, right? But now you can sometimes get them in the 2%, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, even lower. I've heard of even lower, which is just absolutely bonkers. So it was overpriced. It was also they had a non-profit people. So non-profits were putting people in there and they were subsidizing the rent. So, but there was been a lot of turnover this year. They'd had 14 new tenants and it's a 23 unit. So those things concern me. I think it was overpriced. It was the non-profit thing. It was the turnover thing as well. That there was a high turnover, and to me as well at this point in the cycle, I want to get a deal, right? I don't want to just pay what everyone's paying. I want something where I can create some value. So I don't want to just pay what it's worth and kind of go in, but I want to create some value. So I looked at that. There was a 17 unit that I've kind of been looking at a little bit more. These are more for kind of my personal portfolio,
So you don't team up with anyone for those?
Well, that's the thing. I've had some conversations through this podcast about partnering with some people, even on these smaller deals. There's people that are just interested in just maybe doing what they call a joint venture rather than a syndication. So maybe we just both pull our money together and kind of I do the most of the work, but they're involved in some of the work as well, and we kind of share in the profits according to what kind of money we put in, and maybe I get a little bit more because I'm doing the work. But that's kind of presented itself through the podcast, so that's been interesting this week. I also did a presentation this week.
Okay. So that's the thing. I help you a little bit, Bill, because things need folks need to know that. I mean, I'm Barry's digital marketer, but I'm also some sort of an assistant type of thing. Can I say, because I'm doing a little bit more than digital marketing. I help you with other stuff. So for example, you had a presentation to do, sort of like help you writing a little guidelines and things like that, So, okay. So you did it.
Yeah.
Okay. Explain to people, because that's cool. That's really cool.
Let me go back one quick second and say, like, that's what's been cool with working with Marc, right? I'm not, like, he has a digital marketing service, so if anyone's interested. So it's a digital marketing, so he helps with the actual digital marketing. But what's helped me as well is because he's a director and an acting coach and an actor himself, right? And he's been performing all his life. He's able to help you with how you speak, how you present yourself on camera, like camera angles, camera lighting, all that stuff, right? So it's more than just posting stuff on Instagram, on editing your podcast, right? More than that. It's because it's how you present yourself, right? It's also kind of the brand that you build as well. So he's helped with all of that. So that
there's something very close. I'm a life coach as well. That's something I did on the sideline while I was performing. And there's something very close to life coaching and digital marketing. If your goals are not clear, then all of your strategies will be off a little bit. So and in your case, sometimes you need a little bit of support to structure what you want to do. You have an idea, like, oh, let's do this, and I'm like, okay, how can we just structure this idea? What would be the next step, or what I mean? So presentation.
From that life coaching as well, I think you understand people, right? You understand personalities, and you come to understand.
Yeah, of course.
My personality is a little bit I have a million ideas, and sometimes you need to just get me to focus on one thing. Say, hey, let's do this one thing first, because my brain kind of, I'm an overthinker, right? I'm always thinking.
Yeah, of course.
So he's come to realize that, and helped me realize that I just need to focus sometimes on one thing, get that thing done, and then move on to the next thing, rather than trying to start 20 things at once and not finish any of them.
And exactly, yeah.
So sorry, back to the presentation. So I did a presentation. I was asked to be on this panel of 5-minute presentations from people from all kinds of different backgrounds, but it was a multifamily masters group, and they're a large group that help people set up meetups all over the country, and now they've gone virtual. So it was a good group, a good amount of people. So they asked me to do a presentation on, well, I got my choice, but it was getting into character, right? And basically the idea is that different situations in our lives require different versions of ourselves, right? You deal with your young child who's crying and is upset about something, right? That's a different version as the person that goes to negotiate on a deal, right? You have to be soft in one and hard in the other, right? In the negotiation to some extent, right? And negotiation is give or take, but I'm just using as an example. When you're meeting with a lender, you need to present a persona, a part of you, and it's just you, right? It's ultimately who you are. It's an extension of who you are. It's not you being fake, but you need to present different versions of yourself throughout the day, right? For different situations. So it's how do you present yourself in those situations? And there was a few quick things that I can cover very quickly here, because otherwise this will get way too long. Is the character needs to have a super goal, right? And we all know that in real estate, you need to have a goal. What is your goal? What is your ultimate goal? But each character should have a super goal. What is their goal above all else? And what is yours? Is it financial freedom? Is it whatever it is, right? Is it making $1 million a week? Whatever that is, right? You understand? Then in each scene, a character has a want. What is that character? What does that character want from that scene? What do you want from that situation, right? And it might sound not manipulative, but you know, you've got to be strategic about stuff a lot of times, right? If you're going to a meetup event and your goal is to meet a mentor, maybe, right? Well, you're not going to talk to a bunch of people who's never done a deal in their lives, right? You can have a conversation, but you can quickly move on and try and find someone. So you want to understand what your want is from that scene. So that helps build that character and understand what that character wants.
Of course, the super goal is key. And after that, you break it down into smaller goals. If the super goal is to have financial freedom and you define what it means for you, then like next week you can already do a smaller action, which is like writing an email or making a phone call, and you know, to achieve that super goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every
absolutely.
character, when you build a character, the super goal needs to be very, very clear. As an actor, you need to know that, you know,
Yeah.
the super goal of the character and what the character want on a smaller scale. And that's how you create the character. That's a guy named Stanislavski that wrote a book about about this. It's an acting technique, and we always use it in you know, in our life. We use it every day, but we're not aware of it. You know, and it's not about lying, because you know, you're saying like we all play a character, and when you negotiate, it's not lying. It's more about um, focusing on the right stuff. You know, if you want to pay 10 grand for a car, even if you have 1 million in your bank account, you need to focus on the fact that you want to pay 10 grand. And on the other side, the person that is selling you the car wants 20 grand, you know? So he needs to believe in his imagination, you know, that that car is worth 20 grand, but you need to imagine that you cannot pay more than 10 grand, you know. And that's how you negotiate. The imagination is key in negotiation, you know. If you don't believe in what you imagine in your head, then you will always, you know, overpay for stuff, I think.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's not a lie, it's just that's the way imagination works.
Yeah. So that was a fun presentation. So I was nervous as hell beforehand. I practiced it, had my notes on the wall. And the thing they didn't realize until a little bit before I went on, I was the last guy to speak. So I was like closing things out, and they had some like high level people on there. And I was like, oh, thanks for that. Just put me in the middle next time. But it was cool. Like, and something else I realized is as well, like, which is good, but I have a habit of just saying yes to stuff. Like they asked me, I didn't think too much about it. I didn't think, hey, can I do it? Can I not? Like, what's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. I just have a habit of saying yes. And then I put myself in these situations, which is good, but I always put myself in challenging situations, right?
Do you, okay, that's a very personal question. And if you don't want to, you know, answer, I'm going to edit the thing, I'm going to cut it out. So no worries. Do you have the imposter syndrome? do you feel sometimes that you don't deserve the, or do you, or you don't deserve the success that you have, or do you feel sometimes that, you know, people see value in you and you're like, I'm just, you know, I'm just a WWE, a former WWE wrestler. Yeah. I'm just
Sometimes
a certain,
I not in all aspects of life, maybe in real estate sometimes, um, because to have a podcast like and be interviewing people, especially to start off with, right? I had that imposter syndrome. Now I've grown into it a lot more.
yeah.
But I don't know. I think I have a not the imposter syndrome, but I think I'm, and it feels strange saying it, but I think I'm humble. I think, and it feels strange.
Yeah, of course you are.
I think it's strange even saying that because it's kind of giving yourself a compliment. I think that's what it is more than anything else. And I think, but when I was presenting, yeah, I was a WWE wrestler and I've done a lot of cool stuff and I had a cool story. It was just, I don't know. I guess maybe I did have that imposter syndrome on Monday, and I think that's what led to me having that nerves. I think, and I'm not always the best public speaker. I did a pretty good job, I thought, but it's not something that, despite being a wrestler, right, that was my least favorite part about being a wrestler was the talking part. So things like that can be challenging sometimes. But but that's what I've realized. I think is that I don't know if I like the challenge, but I'm good at like putting myself in uncomfortable positions. And I think, the more you listen to just general stuff about real estate and successful people, they put themselves in discomfort, right? And they come out.
Yeah.
Once I did it, I was nervous leading up to it. And I was like, oh no, okay, blah, blah, blah. But once I did it and it went well, I was like, wow, that was a great feeling.
And also the fact that here's something, because I've observed with performers, because I've worked on many Cirque du Soleil shows, on touring shows, and as an artistic coach and as a life coach as well. um, One thing I observe in performers, it's sort of in their personality to grow from mistakes, because if you want to reach that level at Cirque du Soleil, you need to be an acrobat, a gymnast, or whatever what the discipline is. You learn by falling, but you learn by hurting yourself. This is deeply anchored in your personality. And a thing that I've noticed with you, or but with many other performers, is it's like a constant growth. It's if I give you a note, like I say, hey Barry, look at the camera when you speak, when you film the intro. You do the mistake once and that's it. Boom, you learn, you gather the information, and you know it's a constant growth thing. It's crazy. um and not be scared of failure. This is so impressive. How many performers that I know that now, because of the pandemic, man, they open a business. They just, but like they started the podcast, and they just decided to like go full on in real estate. In your case, the performers are not scared of failure at all. Maybe they will be a little bit stressed about like a new uncomfortable situation, but they will always go through it, always 100% of the time. It's just something deep inside the personality. Like if you take, for example, a soccer player, for example, okay, like, and I have all, or a football player. No, you watch soccer, you watch
Yeah, yeah.
football, soccer. Do you say football or soccer? You
Football.
say
Oh,
football.
depends
Yeah,
what I'm
okay.
talking to. Depends what I'm talking to.
Yeah, okay. So like, because our crowd is mostly American, so we're gonna say soccer. Take a soccer player. Of course, it's hard to be a professional soccer player, that's for sure. However, they don't learn by falling on their face because they overflip. You know what I mean? The gymnasts, this is what they do. They hurt themselves, which doesn't make gymnasts better than soccer players. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's one aspect of the personality of the performers or martial artists as well. There's something about the pain also. They deal better with pain, physical pain, emotional pain. They just deal better with that. So and I see it working with you on that project, because I've worked with you at Cirque du Soleil, but I haven't worked with you outside. But now I'm working with you. I'm closer to you on another level, in your investment and with your podcast and all. And you still apply the same thing that you've learned on stage or in your wrestling career. You still apply it in your investment career. It's crazy. It's very, very cool.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Hey, I'm gonna
You're
kind of wrap
welcome.
this up a little bit, but I'm gonna
Yes.
So there's one part I wanted to add to this. This is the second one that we did. I wanted to kind of go through some interviews that I did last week. I did 9 interviews last week. So I wanted to kind of cover some points that I'd written down from the 9 interviews. And this might be a while, but they come out, but I wanted to share with people what I learned. So one was I spoke with a guy called Brendan Barri. He was a wholesaler. He did some flips as well, but he was a lot of wholesaling. And he talked about what a good wholesaler does, right? And what he does as a good wholesaler. And he seemed like a really good wholesaler. He's in Detroit. So anyone in Detroit, it'd be someone good for you to hook up with. But he figures out, he knows through years of experience what the cost of renovation is. And for people who don't know what a wholesaler is, they find deals basically. They find people that need to sell, and then they get the deal under contract, and then they sell it on to an investor, and they just make that sandwich in the middle. So if they got a deal for 100,000, they sell it for 110, they make that 10,000, and then they move on. They don't do anything to the property usually. So, but they'll figure out what the value of the property is eventually, once it's fixed up. They'll figure out what the cost is. So they'll know that, and they send it to investors. So the investor knows this one needs to be done. This is what it's going to be worth when it's fixed, and I can make that amount in the middle. So it's, and he does it well, because what a lot of bad wholesalers does, and this is a lot of wholesalers in general, they'll miscalculate the renovation cost. So they'll make it smaller than it actually is, and they'll miscalculate what the sales price will be, because it'll be lower than what they're predicting. So that makes that money that you can make in the middle a lot less. So he was talking about that. So that was really interesting. I had another really interesting with, it was two people. It was Anselmo and Kelly, who are part of what they call SAS, which is Sustainability Solutions. And what they do is they work with people on large apartment complexes to figure out how to lower their water bill. So they'll go in and put low flow short shower heads, 1 gallon toilets, or even less than that. I think they said 0.8 gallon toilets, and a lot of toilets are 3 gallon toilets, right? So every flush, you're saving 2 gallons of water.
Wow.
And others, there's a ton of other stuff that they do. So they go in and they're able to do a study on the apartment, tell you how much it'll cost, how much you save. And it's essentially, turns out to be not free money because you pay for it, but you get that money back in I think they said 18 months on average, and you can save to between 30 and 60% is what they're saying you save on water bill. Why this is amazing is, on a multifamily project, if you're not already accounting for this savings, that's an extra 30% savings you're making on that water, which goes straight to your NOI, which immediately adds value to that property. So it's you're getting higher cash flow, but also you're getting a higher value for that property. So I was fascinated by that.
And they just do with water. They don't do with solar power or
just
other,
just water.
Just water. This is so cool.
Yeah, really,
This is
really
such a
interesting. Yeah. It was really So then I spoke with a great guy called Jason Porter, who's now become a friend that we ended up, me and my wife, going to play pickleball with him and his wife. Really great guy. He was talking about a lot of stuff, but he kind of talked about the law of attraction, which was really got me thinking. Right, the law of attraction, I was never thought about it too much because it seemed kind of hokey to me. Right, The Secret and the law of attraction, you just attract it. But I realized, what I believe is you create your own opportunities, right? And opportunities come your way by being open to it. And essentially that's what it is, right? It's not the law of attraction where you just say, hey, I'm open to things, and they come your way like a magnet, right? It comes your way because you're open to it, right? Two people can be walking down the street, right?
Actually, you pay more attention to it because the goal is clear. You know what you want. So what's presenting, what's offered to you in life, you're gonna spot it way easier because you're focused.
And you know what you're looking for. Exactly.
So it's not necessarily that it comes to you, it's just you spot it because the intention is there. Absolutely. It's not a magical thing.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
I
spoke with a guy called Angelo. He was an inspector. He was an investor as well. But it was really interesting to hear from an inspector's point of view what they look for, right? How they value. So they look for square footage, they look for bedrooms, and they look at the bathroom and the kitchen. Those are the main points that value the house. And I thought that was really interesting. He had an interesting story in general anyway, because he invested quite a bit himself. But I think that from an inspected point of view, that was really interesting. So if you're trying to add value to your property, either try and add a bedroom, add a square footage, add more square footage, or improve the bathroom and the kitchen. So that was really interesting. I spoke with a lady named Savannah Arroyo, calls herself a net worth nurse, which was an interesting branding. I like that a lot. She
That's
just done
very cool.
She'd just done her first syndication, and I always heard, syndication you assume to be 50 plus units at least, right, roughly.
Yeah.
Well, she'd done a syndication on a 14 unit, which is really small, but it just made sense by the numbers. And she talked about how she partnered with friends and family. So that was really interesting. I talked with a guy called Mario Lancioni. I probably mispronounced his name, but he'd grown his real estate empire really quickly, along with his brother. And he talked about treating people right and treating the team right, and he was always good to people. And he did a lot of Section 8 as well. And the more I've interviewed people, the more I've been open to actually the Section 8 thing. Section 8 is where it's government subsidized housing, so the government pays a portion of that rent.
Okay.
So it's really interesting, especially during this time now.
Yeah.
I spoke with a guy called Walter Amarello. He has a podcast called Alchemist Nation, which is really interesting. And he's grown a lot himself, right? I think he has over 100 doors is what he said. And he's just talked about how he'd done that, how he'd grown, and the troubles he'd had all the time. And he was just a really interesting guy to talk to. Then I spoke with a guy called Chris Reed, who's out in Vietnam, Saigon, Vietnam. He's an Australian who lived in London, traveled all over Europe, married a Russian, moved to Siberia, then ended up in Thailand. So that itself was an interesting story. But what he does sort of SEO. He does this kind of digital marketing. It's different to what you do, but their focus is on building a website and driving people to that website through SEO and other things. So he described it as building the best business possible for you. So that was really interesting. And then I had a great talk with a guy called Michael Harris, who was just kind of more starting out on his journey, but he was a realtor just outside San Diego. So I had a really interesting talk to him about how things were there in that market and what he was seeing there. So it was a really good week full of interviews. Those interviews will be coming in the next weeks or months to come. But it was a good week, 9 interviews. So that was fun.
Having a podcast is just a must now. That's it. Do you see the amount of networking you're doing? So you're talking, you did 9 interviews so far. So far, we uploaded 69 interviews, not counting that the one that you uploaded before I started collaborating with you. So you're gonna reach like 100 in January-ish. We're gonna be at 100. That's 100 people. That's 100 hours, maybe more than that you spend to really get to know someone. Not just a meeting in a I don't know how it really works in real estate. Probably there's some like get together or some convention of some sort, probably, that there's a lot of like chitty chat and it's 2 minutes and that's it. This is like the camera is on, we have 1 hour or even more, and let's talk about everything. You really get to know that person, you know what I mean? It's very, very cool. And it's such a wonderful tool because you're learning as an investor, they're learning from you, and the people that listen or watch the podcast learn as well. It's just a win-win-win situation. I don't see why people wouldn't have a podcast. But
no, it is
real estate investor,
it's been unbelievable. Yeah, we talked about the pandemic before, and the biggest thing two things: spending time with my son and my wife, but also this podcast has been like just huge for me. So I couldn't agree more.
And another cool thing is you don't only interview big shots, you interview every size of investor. It doesn't matter. You don't, you have some beginners that just invest in one deal and they, they're on their way, and you speak to people that are like tremendously successful, so that's pretty cool as well, that you give a voice to anyone, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's cool to talk to those people, because I think there's plenty of people that are listening that are just starting out themselves, and they maybe think that they can't do it, or they're scared to do it, or they don't know how to do it. I think just hearing these people's stories that either have just got one deal, how they did it, why they did it, what lessons did they learn. But also I speak to some people, I think, that haven't done any deal. I think I've spoken to maybe a couple of people like that. And I think it's interesting to get their perspective, right? And we all love real estate, because otherwise we wouldn't be listening to this podcast or talking about it right now. So I think even just having that conversation about real estate, I think is interesting, right? I think hopefully people enjoy that, right? Just the conversation itself. So, But with that,
Absolutely.
I'm going to wrap it up and say thank you once again, Marc. Hopefully everyone enjoyed this. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube, please, because it really helps us build this platform, right? It really helps us grow.
And write a review on Apple. Super important, please. If you reach the end of this episode, you're there. Just go on Apple, write a review. It would mean so much for us. It's those small little action that you guys can do to support the channel and what Barry is trying to accomplish. Or just follow on Instagram, and give a thumbs up and engage with us. Barry is all about like talking to anyone. If you have any question or whatever, just go.
Yeah, reach out. Yeah, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, reach out. You can DM me, you can comment, you can, there's even sign up for a call, right? There's a link in the description below. There's wrestlingwithrealestate.com. You guys can sign up then. We can get on a call and you can ask me any. I won't necessarily know the answers to everyone, but I might be able to help you find the answers. So, and I love talking about this stuff. So if you guys want to do that, I would love to.
With the amount of people by now,
yeah.
you'll just refer the right person. You'll give a nice referral.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Marc.
Cool. Thank you, Barry.